Hello and welcome to Movie Night in our brand spanking new movie theatre which we built ourselves. Our very own Movie Night Cinema. What do you think of the new space, Gabe?
I love it. It's cozy. I like it in here.
Yeah, we got the lights fitted. Just need to do a bit of carpeting now, and then we're good to go. Today.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I'm Andy, and this is Gabe.
Hi, how's it going?
So, a couple weeks ago, we talked about the movie The Best of Times, starring Robin Williams and Kurt Russell. And I was talking about how I think Robin Williams is one of the greatest actors to ever do it. So, I decided to bring to the table this time my favourite Robin Williams performance. We're talking about 1 Hour Photo. Gabriel, what do you think?
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna go right into my opinion. Well, I think the fact that you were talking about his performance is kind of instructive here because I have two completely separate opinions about his performance and the movie. And they're not at all similar. So I guess I'll talk about Robin Williams' performance and then give my opinion of the actual movie. So I think if you look in the dictionary under the word pro, there ought to be a picture of Robin Williams there. I think you had said in our Best of Times episode that he can just do anything. He can just play any. He has infinite range when it comes to his acting chops, and you definitely see that here. He is sad and funny, but creepy and scary all in the same project, and he does all of those things seamlessly, sometimes within the same scene, sometimes within the same moment. Add to that I like the little things that I noticed he did, like the way, the timing with which he would fiddle with his glasses, or the sort of stilted way he walked or stood, and just little choices that he made as an actor to make this guy what he appeared to be on the screen was just, I mean, just nobody does that better. You can't do that any better than he did it. So let's break that up. That's kind of my take on the performance. What, maybe you give your thoughts on the performance, and then we'll talk about the actual movie, which is very different to me.
So, the gist of it, if you haven't seen the film, and I do recommend you go and see it because we always spoil everything. Robin Williams plays someone who works in a 1 hour photo shop in a shopping mall, which is something that, oh, not a shopping mall, sorry, a supermarket, which is something that you don't really have anymore, and he would process your photos and he would give them back to you. And obviously that means you're giving your photos to an absolute stranger. So Robin Williams plays a character, Cy the photo guy, who has this crippling obsession with one particular family that comes in that he processes the photos for. And he obsesses over this family, and then he starts trying to manufacture ways in which he can bump into them in the street, and the plot kind of spirals from there. Not very much happens in this film, but it's all anchored by Robin Williams' performance, and I think he's absolutely incredible in this. I mentioned it in our Best of Times video, but George Rockel Schmidt, who is a film critic and filmmaker on YouTube, he once said that Robin Williams resonated with him not because he was good at being funny, but because he was good at being sad. And I think this is true. As you say, he is funny, he is creepy, he's heartbreaking, he's intimidating. He does it all in this film. And this film's not that long either. It's only about 90 minutes or so. But he does so much, and he does it all, I think, flawlessly.
Yeah, and I don't know if this was a role that was written for him or if somebody just thought about him and cast him, but what I really honed in on was because we know everything that Robin Williams does in this film, he does in pretty much every film. He has been in these emotional states in other things throughout his career. What I really honed in on was the little subtle choices that he made to communicate what this guy was about emotionally. That's what really impressed me, because a lot of the time we think of Robin Williams as being sort of over the top, and we don't notice the little subtle things that he does.
Well, this role was in answer to your question. This role was originally they originally approached Jack Nicholson to play the role.
I knew it.
Yeah.
I knew it. I absolutely knew that Jack Nicholson. It was the same with Batman, the Joker, and Batman. They considered Robin Williams for that too. I actually thought about what that would have been like when I watched him in this.
Yeah, they seem to have been like asked to do similar things before, but Jack Nicholson turned it down because he thought it was too similar to the role he played in The Shining. I don't see it at all.
What?
I think that's like a weird take from Jack Nicholson. I have no idea. I have no idea what he means. But him having said that, I'm so glad he didn't play this role, because the impression that I'm getting is that you didn't really like the film much. But I would say that that I love this film. And I don't think this film would have worked without Robin Williams, because there is so little there other than the literal events that you see, and everything else is the subtleties of his performance. I think if Jack Nicholson had played this role, it would have been a completely different film, and I don't think it would have worked.
He would have played it too scary. He would have played it too scary. He's too intimidating a person. Williams was perfect for this, because you need to have your first impression of him as being this overly friendly, sort of mild-mannered person, and I don't think Jack Nicholson could have done that. When Jack Nicholson smiles, there's something threatening there, even if he's in a good mood, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I do.
He can't. Yeah, and that wouldn't have. Yeah,
he's got a tough guy look about him.
Yeah.
Yeah, like because the thing that really struck me, because I saw this film for the first time a couple of years ago, and I rewatched it last week when we were meant to record the first time before we had a bunch of delays. So I rewatched it then, and what struck me is that Robin Williams, bear with me, I don't think Cy is creepy until he is. The majority of the time he's in this film, and admittedly we see a side of him that most people don't, I don't think he is creepy. I think he comes off as a perfectly nice, affable man who comes across as kind of a lonely man. Even the little boy in the film goes, I think Cy the photo guy is probably quite lonely, and it's something that makes him sad. I think he comes off like a really nice guy, and it's only when you see some of the lengths that he will go to, like when he manufactures an encounter with the mother of the family that he is obsessed with, and he's reading the book that she happens to be reading because he saw it in her bag, and then you're like, oh yeah, he's a bit creepy. But until those moments, I really don't think he is.
Yeah, I don't think he is at his not at first impression at his core. That's when I said that, I was talking more about like the from beginning to end. I was really just talking about like the range of emotions and stuff that he was playing. But yes, you're quite right. Boy, I gotta tell you. Well, maybe I'll start here. So I'm gonna list a few film titles so that you and the two people that watch us kind of get a sense of the kind of movies that I'm talking about. So, The Crush, Fear, Training Day, right? Psychological thrillers that typically have a manipulative, dark sort of antagonist person who's probably has like psychotic tendencies or whatnot. If that's if that makes sense, that particular genre of film, which this is one of, in a good way, I'm the kind of guy. I there's something intrinsically sort of funny about those kinds of movies to me and to my brother. Actually, we have always found that. You ever meet that guy where he kind of person where they laugh at horror movies? Kind of there's something kind of silly to them about horror movies or slasher movies. There's something kind of silly about these kinds of films where, to some degree, at some point, characters in the film have to be oblivious in some way, and that's kind of funny. And these scenarios are kind of the over the top antagonists are kind of funny. The script in this film was a rough draft. The draft you do where you just jot down all the ideas that you have for what the movie's going to be. So this guy works at a photo lab, and he works there. He has this whole philosophy about pictures, and he wants a family, and he's lonely, and he likes the wife, and the family has problems. So you get all these bullet points, you jot down all these ideas, and that's all the movie ended up being. And this is the problem that I had with the movie as a whole. The characters in this movie are just props. They are just props to get the scene from one place to another so that you have these resonant scenes that appear to be giving you information about this guy, but they're really just giving you they're giving you payoffs without setups. I had so many questions about this guy that I wanted answered. Not only were the questions not answered, they changed what the question was throughout the movie. I'll tell you what I mean. So I was wondering to myself, okay, why does this kid think that Cy the photo guy is sad? Why does he think he's sad? Why did he have that conversation with his mom? Is this kid empathetic, and is he considered a sissy by other kids? And I started, because you sort of intuitively, because you've seen films like this before, so you sort of intuitively try to figure out what the writer is trying to do with this guy. Well, it was just a scene to have that scene, because that's a scene that they needed to be in a movie like that. Why does Cy why is he obsessed with specifically this family? Why does he want specifically this life? Why is he honing in specifically on that dad? Why does he specifically want to be the friendly uncle in that family? It's never answered. It just does, because that's what you would have happen in a movie. This is why I say it's a rough draft, because those are the things, when you do the second and third and a polish, that you write for the thing, but they didn't do that. So you go through this whole thing with at least for me, with those questions in mind. They never get to that. We see the results that you would have had if you had written those elements in. Without those elements, we get to the end of the film. Nothing happens. He doesn't do anything in the movie. When we get to the end of the film, and he's being interviewed by the detective, and in the course of this interview, in the one explosive scene that I wanted way more of in this movie with that performance, in the one time that they actually let Robin Williams cut loose in this movie, so he says to the detective, "You seem like you're a good man. You seem like you're a family man. You seem like you're a good father." And he flies off into this rage in a scene that I wish that we had had so much more of. They finally let Robin Williams cut loose in this film for the first time, and he says, "You wouldn't make your children do sick, disgusting things and take pictures of them while they're doing it," right? So we are supposed to infer from that part of the reason that he's all into photographs is because that happened to him. That doesn't really make sense to me. I don't see how those two. I don't see why he wouldn't have had an aversion to photographs because of that. There's ways that I can see that working, but the film doesn't get into these details, as I say, which is one of the frustrating things about it. But I thought he wanted to be part of that family. I thought he wanted to be a family man. I thought he wanted to be one of the guys watching football and being the uncle and stuff. Where did this thing come from? So now we're supposed to and how does that track? So he was mad at the dad for cheating on the wife, which apparently didn't happen with his family, because now we're talking about this problem where his dad was apparently abusive in that way. But the thing is, he's saying that you wouldn't make your children do these disgusting things, but the kid's dad didn't do that. So where does this animosity come from? Where is this guy coming from? Where are these motivations coming from? What are they anchored to in this movie? That was incredibly frustrating, because this was the germ of a good movie that could have been made if they had written it. And that was really, really frustrating, because I loved the way the movie was directed. I loved the way it was acted. I loved the cast. I loved the way it looked. I loved the makeup and the costumes, everything. That was really frustrating.
Okay, I see your point, and I think some other people have been confused by that reveal as well, because some people thought that Sai flew into a rage because he found pictures of the child that were inappropriate, to put it as mildly as I can, because I know that some people get affected by things like that. So I'm just going to put it like that. And that's why he flew into a rage. And to the people that think that doesn't make sense, because he was their fucking photo man, which means he probably... He would have flown... Like, put it this way, if the dad had been taking sick pictures of his child, I feel like Sai would have known about it and probably would have killed the dad a very long time ago. Because I do feel like this guy. I feel like this guy. He never does actually hurt anyone. But I feel like this guy probably could kill someone.
Sure, I agree. And there's also a line in the movie, just to that point, there's also a line he specifically says that they have to report those things, and he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that doesn't follow procedure. So yeah, that I don't know, that doesn't it doesn't track. That doesn't track to me.
I agree that Sai is pretty mysterious in this film, but the difference is I think this is actually to a degree to the film's benefit. Because what I think a lot of filmmakers, what I think a lot of lesser filmmakers would have done, was try to explain everything. But instead, you are left with a brief portrait of a man who you don't really understand, because no one really understands him. You don't really know much about the family, because Sai doesn't know anything about the family except what he projects onto them. So, like, you have this film where the film so everything in this film, in the best possible way, looks horrendous. The floors are bleached white. The walls are bleached white. His costume is bleached white and blue, except for the few scenes where he's not in his uniform, in which he wears what George Ruckelschmidt described as paedophile beige.
Yeah, right. That's good.
This whole film has this... You know when we talked about Mr. Nobody, I said the film looked like a hospital ward?
Yes.
And I was thinking about 1 Hour Photo as I said that, because 1 Hour Photo looks like a hospital ward. It's this cold, like, surgeon's environment, kind of like what he is with the photographs that he processes. And it is a film in which everybody talks to each other and nobody connects. And I think there's something very powerful with that, because the opening monologue, he says that photographs, and of course when you're factoring in what has happened to him in his childhood, people never take a photograph of something they want to forget. So there's this juxtaposition of the happy times that we see in photographs, and I guess now with like social media and all of that obligatory, it's still relevant. Yeah, of course it's still relevant. You have these happy, pretty pictures, a happy, pretty family that he wants to be a part of, but can't. And yeah, I agree. You don't really know very much about the family. You don't know very much about him, but I almost think that's kind of the point. There's so much about these people that you don't know, and no one connects in the film. No one reaches out to Sai. No one tries to understand him. He doesn't really try to understand the family beyond what he kind of idealizes them as being. And the second he sees something that contradicts that, he flies into a rage. Like when his boss sits down with him and complains, he says like take a vacation and stuff like that, but he never sits down and goes, Sai, what's up with you? Talk to me, like a good manager would.
Or even just like a human being would talk to another human being. Yeah.
But that never happens. He never gets that moment, and he doesn't get it from the film. We are just left as confused at the end of the film as we are when we meet him. He breaks into the hotel room of the dad who is cheating on his wife, and he makes it seem as though he's taking sick pictures of them. And then when you have the reveal of the photographs, he was just using the flash. He didn't take photographs of them at all. He just photographed random stuff in the room, but there were no photographs of them. He wouldn't do it. And you do think, why? And the answer is, we don't really know. We can only guess at why he behaved in that way, and we can only guess at why he did the things that he did. And I think that has made the film more powerful for me than, say, like a Training Day or a film like that, where you kind of know everything about them in this psychological
how it's going to go into it.
Yeah. Do you get what I mean? Because the complaints that you have, I do hear why you think that way. Because I mean, when I described the film myself, I said not an awful lot happens. But also that scene where he cuts loose at the end and he finally sort of goes into that rage. I think if we'd had more of that one scene wouldn't have been as powerful. I think it would have been Robin Williams shouting for a lot of the film. But that he is so restrained until that final moment when he just explodes, I think is so much more powerful, personally.
So I get and appreciate everything that you just said, and I'm cool with show don't tell, less is more. I'm totally cool with that. I do think that there's a line between subdued elements and underwritten elements, and to me, this didn't come off as like, I didn't feel like I didn't understand where he was coming from or why this family, or all the questions I asked at the beginning. I didn't feel that I didn't have answers to that because the people writing this film wanted to keep it mysterious and leave it to my imagination. I felt like I wasn't given those answers because this was a rough draft that wasn't polished very well, that wasn't hammered out very well. If this had been a film like that, like you described, where they're leaving things out so that you supply your own answers, I would have been totally cool with that. I don't think that was the case here. I think, as I said, I think they jotted down everything that should be in a thriller. I think they jotted down everything that should be in a thriller regarding a guy who works at a photo lab. and kind of just left it at that. But I do take your point. And for those who took that from it, that's awesome. I just your explanation doesn't alleviate my frustration,
No,
unfortunately.
that makes
With
sense.
yeah, it just I wanted a better movie. I wanted a movie where you don't have to spell everything out, but you have to have some kind of idea of where this guy's coming from. Another thing, that scene where he got fired. I made some notes about this. I don't have my phone handy, but I'll just as things come to me. That just came out of nowhere, and this is another example of we need to have a scene like this in the movie where he gets fired and he breaks his facade and he builds it.
What do you mean?
You're telling me that this guy's had all these hundreds of discrepancies. It had to be for years because he's been collecting these photos for years because the little kids are grown up now. You're telling me that he's had these discrepancies for all these years and they're only now figuring it out? It's awfully convenient at this point in the film where we need a scene like this where now they figure it out and then their immediate solution is to fire him.
Yeah, no, I see. I see your point. I do see your point. Yeah.
I just that was so like, and I'm not because this movie sucks. No, I'm like that because I liked what I was seeing and I wanted it to be better. I wanted it to be coherent.
This feels like me with Buffalo 66, the first movie we covered.
Yeah, a little bit. Yes, yeah, I think so. Yeah, and in that film, I gave you. In fact, I think I gave your exact answer for why we didn't know that much about that character. So fair enough. It was frustrating, not because I didn't like the film, but because I did like what was there. They dropped the ball as surely as Robin Williams' character in The Best of Times. That was how the movie was for me.
Would it shock you to know this film was inspired by Taxi Driver?
It wouldn't shock me only because I've never seen Taxi Driver and I don't even know what it's about.
So we could do Taxi Driver at some point, but essentially sure. It was a similar idea of take a lonely person doing what could be considered quite a mundane job and them just kind of developing an obsession with this idea. Driver. You see, Taxi Driver is essentially the makings of a political assassin. He doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, he doesn't become a political assassin, but he gets close.
Was that the thing that inspired Ronald Reagan's assassin when he was trying to impress Jodie Foster?
Yes, it was. It was.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, it was. Taxi Driver's great. A lot of really cringe people like it, and a lot of really cringe people like to make fun of those cringe people that like it. But it's a good film, and it was a big influence for this.
That's meta.
But what I think is interesting because when you compare it to Taxi Driver, it goes in this complete opposite way. Where Taxi Driver is this super gritty, dirty looking film, and this film is so sterile.
Clean, yeah. Especially the scenes of the Walmart or whatever it's called in the movie, that looked really good. The blue on white was really striking.
Because you didn't like that look, did you, in Mr. Nobody?
No, because Mr. Nobody, it looked so artificial. It looked like they used CGI to make it look that way. This looked like a real place that was just not quite. It looked like a real location that's somebody's idea of what a Walmart would look like. That's in like an upscale area. If you take my meaning.
Yeah, it looked like a real location that happened to be hideous.
It was just a little off. Yes, yeah, that really worked. Whereas in Mr. Nobody, I felt like it looked like a special effect to me.
Yeah, because Mark Romanek, who directed this film, he has pretty much only directed this film, and he directed Never Let Me Go. And outside of that, he mostly does music videos.
And, okay, I can see that.
Well, you know, like when they show the the rolls of film going through the machines and them getting sliced, they sort of reminded me of music videos, because I believe Mark Romanek's done a handful of Nine Inch Nails' videos.
Okay.
Because Nine Inch Nails were originally going to do the score for this film, but it didn't get used. But I think he did.
Wow, that's weird.
Because Trent Reznor is now a film composer, an Oscar-winning film composer. He did The Social Network and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if this was his first foray into things like that. But from what I understand, the music didn't actually get used. But what kind of brought me to this was that we did the Best of Times, and that was your suggestion a couple weeks ago. And then right after that, your next suggestion was Ernest Goes to Jail, and we were talking with Ernest Goes to Jail about how Jim Varney never quite got to show the range that he did, which was why I so wanted to talk about Robin Williams in this film, because I think I assume this is the kind of role you would have liked to have seen Jim Varney do.
Yes. Yes, or just I think you made a great point in the Ernest Goes to Jail one, where like that or a '90s action villain. Holy shit, would that have been amazing?
So had you seen Robin? Because I remember in our Best of Times video, I said people who don't like Robin Williams usually just come off as assholes, and you went, bad news, I don't like Robin Williams. So,
yeah.
What was your thoughts on Robin Williams going into this film, and if they have changed at all, what do you kind of think coming out of this film now that you've seen him do something so different? I'm running on the assumption that you hadn't seen him do something that wasn't comedy, but I don't know that for a fact. That's just me assuming.
Well, so I don't think that his role was particularly comedic in Hook. It was childlike, but there were some very serious scenes in that movie, particularly in the not Neverland parts of it, and I really liked him in that. I thought he was. I think he's good when he's sort of anchored to something where he's not just playing somebody who's weird or frantic. He's way better. And I have liked him in a lot of things. When I say I don't like Robin Williams, I'm thinking of very specific elements of his career. I didn't find his stand-up particularly funny.
You're thinking of Flubber.
Yeah, shit like that, exactly. I think all his impressions sound like himself. That's one criticism I've always had about him. When he goes over the top, it's just too much, and it's not. He gets to a point when he's doing physical comedy where I think he thinks he's funnier than he actually is, and so that's kind of what I mean. When he dials that down, but he does. For most of his career, especially his later career, he kind of got away from that. When he dials it down, he can be very good, as he was very good here. And I think he was very good in Hook, and I think he was very good in a lot of other roles that he had. So I maybe just qualify my I don't like Robin Williams thing. I have a lot of problems with a lot of stuff he did earlier. My opinion of him in this was that I wish he had, and damn it, he's left us as well, just like Jim Varney did. I wish he had more like this. I wish that, just like Jim Varney, I wish we had gotten to see more of that.
That's fair. Where would this say, if you were to have your Mount Rushmore of Robin Williams performances, where would you put this one? Because for me, this is my favourite role he ever did. I never saw his theatre work for obvious reasons, and that's a shame.
Yeah.
But for me, this is his best role. I don't know where you stand on it.
I have this weird affinity for Hook. I really, that probably was not so much the Neverland stuff, but the real world stuff. That probably was my favorite role of his. I have this weird thing with that movie, and all of the rumors that I wrote a fan fiction called Rufio and the Lost Boys that connected when Peter Pan left, and then when he came back and told the story of who the fuck Rufio was and why they are totally inaccurate and false, and fuck you for bringing it up. But yeah, I have this weird thing about that movie. So that's probably the one that stands out the most to me. This would probably be the second one, only because I sound like a broken record, but it's just I just can't get away from it. I loved his performance. I hated the fact that it didn't seem to be connected to anything for me. And so that really took, I wanted this thing to be whole and complete. But in terms of the performance, yes, this was amazing. And it really made me think. When I heard that he was considered for Joker, I thought, oh, that would have been, I don't think that. And now I'm like, I really wonder what that could have been.
Yeah, I think he would have been a good Joker. The only caveat was because obviously we mentioned earlier that he was considered for the Joker before Jack Nicholson was, and the only caveat for me was, would he have got to be a good Joker at that point in time? Because I can understand how you might cast him as the Joker in the late 80s because he's a popular comedian, and the last significant version of the Joker was Cesar Romero.
Yeah, true.
So I could see, but
yeah,
but he would he would have been a good Cesar Romero style Joker as well.
Yeah,
so.
he would have. Well, but you're right. Would he have gone dark like he did in this? And I actually think he would have. I think at that stage, I believe he would have used that as an opportunity to portray something a little bit darker than he had done before. But who knows?
Yeah, I think he could well have. He could well have. I think he had a knack for. I think he could have seen. He could have seen the writing on the wall. I think if he had seen, well, look at Michael Keaton, look at Tim Burton, look at the aesthetic. I think he may have sort of saw the writing on the wall and gone for a more serious. You can do serious and funny at the same time.
Sure. Sure.
As Terry Pratchett said, the opposite of funny isn't serious. The opposite of funny is not funny. Comedy is serious, and I agree with Terry Pratchett.
Right, I agree too. And fuck, you would have had two comedians doing serious roles of them, but damn, that would have been kind of amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and I do kind of think I probably would have liked Robin Williams more than Jack Nicholson in that role.
I didn't really think much of Jack Nicholson in that role, to be honest. I thought he was kind of playing Jack Nicholson. I didn't get. That's another one where I didn't get where they were coming from, and you never knew where any of those Batman movies, the Tim Burton ones, the villains' motivations were always just fucking all over the place, especially the second one. Why the hell were they trying to make the Penguin the mayor? What was the play there? And what the hell was Catwoman even doing?
I don't want to get too off topic, but
sorry,
but that would have made sense if they did the Penguin as the Penguin, a crime boss, him trying to become the mayor. That would have made sense. But instead, he's this weird little mutant man.
Like if the Oswald family had this political legacy, and Shrek wanted to build this power plant thing, but he didn't have the political clout. Well, now he's got this guy.
If the Colin Farrell Penguin, if the Colin Farrell Penguin were trying to go for mayor, you see what I mean? But anyway,
for sure.
Back to 1 hour photo.
You know what? Not back to the real world. Can I give you one more casting anecdote that's totally off topic? You can cut this. You can cut this if you want to. But since we're talking about casting, do you know that when Miramax, when they bought the rights to The Crow, the comic book, they sat down with James O'Barr. They had licensed the rights or bought it or whatever you did back then. And they sat down with him and they said, we want to make this a musical and we want to cast Michael Jackson in the lead.
Okay, so back to 1 hour photo, because I can't process that.
You know what he said to them? You know what he said to them?
Fuck off.
He looked at them and he said, Why did you pay so much money to buy the thing that I made if you were just going to do this with it? Why didn't you make up your own thing? You can make up a singing and dancing guy with a painted face. Why did you spend this money if you were just going to fuck with it like this? And that was a really good question.
Yeah.
It wasn't until Brandon Lee joined the Anyway, go.
All right. So it was my first real exposure to Robin Williams as a dramatic actor, other than that episode of Law and Order he did, or depending on how you feel about Bicentennial Man. I think we probably both agree on this point, even though our opinions on the film differ, that this film is firmly anchored by Robin Williams, at least narratively. I do think the filmmaking and the directing all serve the story in a great way, but I do think when you talk about 1 Hour Photo, you do talk about Robin Williams, and that's kind of what we're doing right now. We're not exactly going against the grain and being like, actually, the script was very Robin Williams is he is the draw, and I do think he is the best part of the film.
Yeah, for sure.
So the thing that I mentioned earlier that I wanted to kind of get into was that Robin Williams, he never, to me, is creepy until he's creepy. And I know that sounds like a really daft thing to say, but Robin Williams, to me, it doesn't give off Stranger Danger vibes, even though when he's talking to the little boy in the shopping aisle and his dad goes, "What have I told you about talking to strangers?" He, to me, never really gives off Stranger Danger vibes. He doesn't come off as creepy until you see what's going on. But then when he reaches out to the parents, and when he reaches out to the kid and talks to them, he doesn't seem to want anything from them. He doesn't ask to come over. He doesn't try to force his way into their lives, really. He just looks for interactions. Like when he has the book and he starts talking to the mum, and he has a vintage photograph that he bought that he pretends is his mother, and it's not, just for the sake of having a conversation. And then he shouldn't have done this, but when he buys the Evangelion figure for the little boy, and the little boy very responsibly says, "I can't accept this," he's not trying to abduct the child. He's not trying to hurt anyone. He is just looking for interaction. When that woman leaves, he just lets her go. He doesn't try to haggle her to spend more time with it. He's just looking for any sort of interaction. And I think that is in of itself really interesting. I don't think he would have necessarily become dangerous. I mean, it's all well and good saying that he did, but I don't think he necessarily would have ever become dangerous had he not found out about the cheating. I think he probably just likely wouldn't have seen them again after he lost his job. But he does seem, for the most part, harmless until he does snap.
Yeah, he does. Boy, I agree. I'm not sure that works to the movie's strengths. Typically, in a movie like this, you have a character like that who's in a position of trust with the family, and you disarm the audience by putting him in a position of trust. And then that trust is gradually picked at. Like, you would have a guy like this, let's say that they had known this guy for, the whole time their kids have been born, because he does their photos, and they had developed a rapport with him, and They use him at their birthday parties or something. Let's say he's a photographer in addition to being a film developer or whatever.
Sure.
And they use him at their birthday parties, and he's in a position of relative trust. He's not a family friend, but he's a position of trust, right? And then you gradually get these, oh, that's weird. Why is he reading that book that she's reading? Oh, that's weird. Why is he buying these gifts? And you gradually erode away that trust until he goes from being this disarming, trusting figure to the audience to darker and darker and darker until all of a sudden, oh, God, this guy's a threat. And but you don't get that. It's just pieces. So, yes, I agree that he doesn't come off as creepy, and he doesn't come off as threatening, and he doesn't want to hurt anybody. But then what is he doing in this? Yeah, then what is he doing in this movie? Then what is the crux of the emotional resonance of this movie? And it would have been cool. I would have been cool with that if we had maybe if that was a false flag where you think that he's threatening and you think that he has bad intentions, but there's a twist and it turns out he's actually trying to protect somebody or give me something to explain why that's not the case or why that would be the case. And I'm really not trying to dump on this movie. I liked what was there, but even in your description of it, I was just, it just brought back these memories of what I wanted this thing to be. But I do take your point, and it's true. It's true that he doesn't want to hurt anybody, and he really doesn't have.
I almost think that, because on one hand, I see what you mean, where it's like, does it necessarily play to the movie's strengths? I will make the argument that it does, although I don't know if I actually believe this. I'm playing devil's advocate. In that I think if they had gone the route that you suggest there, I think you would have had a lot more of a generic film. And on one hand, a film being more conventional and more tropey is not necessarily a bad thing. It is or it isn't. But I think that for me, the character and the performance is just kind of elevated by the fact that I just can't pin this dude down. And on one hand, you can make the argument that is because it's not a particularly well-written character. And I could hear that. I don't know if I agree, but I could hear that. But on the other hand, like, if this were a movie more like, say, Nightcrawler, which is a film that is fantastic, but if this was a film more like Nightcrawler, it'd be like, well, it's a film that's more like Nightcrawler, but with Robin Williams as a photo guy. And then I think it could have got more into stuff I'd seen before, but I don't truly know if I've ever seen a film quite like this before. I've seen films in similar molds, but there's just something, I almost want to say, pedestrian about the movie. It feels
about this movie.
Yeah, and pedestrian, not in a bad way, but in like, it feels like you could have read a news article about the events of this film, in that there is no real great big climax. There is no clear villain. There's no clear motivation beyond loneliness. It's just a feeling. It's a film with a lot of feelings, and in a way this almost makes it seem more believable, like something that could have actually happened, as opposed to if he just started murdering people. Which I think is what, not you, but I think a lot of people would have suggested as, what if he kills someone? And I think this character probably does have it in him to do something like that. But I think the fact that by the end of the film, what did he do? He just scared people. He arguably traumatized them, but but like he doesn't maim anyone. He doesn't kill anyone. He's just a very peculiar person, and you can't pin him down. Until talking about it here, like, it never really registered with me why I loved this performance so much, other than the fact that he just moves me, and that will always be my thing. I try to be as fair as I can to movies, because I act and I've directed shilly short films, and that is difficult in of itself. Never mind the whole prospect of making a film, but for me, what it comes down to ultimately is, did it move me? Did it make me feel something? And there have been movies that were, like, great, like, technical movies, or great, like, pieces of art that other people really love, and they just don't move me. And for me, I think with this one, and especially his performance, and I will admit it is more the performance than the film. It's just something that makes me feel something, and I think that's so exciting to get to see a character and see a performance where, as prominent as Robin Williams is, and as famous as his dopey looking mug is, he does just disappear.
Well, we certainly had exactly the same reaction and exactly the same feelings about the performance. So no argument about that. I will say, not to put too fine a point on it, but the issue of should this have been a more pedestrian film, or not pedestrian? That's not the word. Should this have been a more conventional? Is the one. Should this have been a more conventional film? If not conventional, the film, not the performance, not what you felt with the character, but the film itself. It wasn't an unconventional film either. It was just sort of a dry hustle. If it was just, it needed to be something. It needed to take shape and connect to something. And I think that leaving it like that, because you rightly say that for the majority of the film, it was about loneliness until we get that line about how he was abused. And then it's about trauma, but you don't see that trauma. You don't really feel that trauma because it's discordant, because they had, just what I said before, because it was a rough draft, and I'm repeating myself, but I can't get away from that. As much as you resonated with the performance in this movie, and so did I was harmed in my experience of watching this movie by the fact that it was so. There's a line in Fawlty Towers where Basil says to his architect, he said, "Rather than dumping the bricks in a pile, I thought you would have found time to cement them together." And I feel like in this movie, rather with the elements of the story, not the performance, the elements, rather than dumping the bricks in the pile, they should have cemented them together. That's all I can say.
That's fair. The only thing I'd say when it in regards to it being about trauma is, I think, again, it's the performance. He's quite clearly traumatized the whole way through. When he's looking at the photograph, and he starts laughing, and he just breaks down in tears. How he gets so angry at the idea that the printer doesn't have quite the right amount of ink in it. I think it is. I think it is there, and I do think it's in part there. Right. It's hard for me to assess the writing when it's a script that I didn't see. Because I saw the film, I didn't read the script, but I also think that you can and have made the argument that a lot of that stuff might not necessarily be there in the writing, but the film isn't. We come back to this a lot. The film isn't the words on the page. The film is the work itself, and I think in terms of like the motivation being trauma, I do think we get that. Well, again, from his performance, and I know I keep coming back to that because I can't deny that the script is
it's
quite
true.
bare.
No, it's true.
The script is
not
bare,
wrong.
but it's a bit like. But I guess my defence of it would be, I could argue, but if you take Robin Williams out, what's there? And so wouldn't it be a fundamentally different film? Robin Williams is there. Jaws does have the shark in it, sort of thing.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. But where does the trauma come from? Is it because he's lonely? Is it because he wants to be a family man, but he can't because he's impotent or something, or he had a divorce? Is it because he was abused? Is it because of where is that coming from?
I'd
And
have
I
to
think
assume
that's
it
an
was the
important question.
abuse that causes him to isolate himself is probably what I would have to.
Then why
have
does
to
he
go
want? Then why does he want to be? Then why does he want to be hanging around the house and be accepted by the You can't. You would expect if this was all coming from the fact that he was abused as a child, that doesn't track with half of the other things that he wants. He's acting like a person who has been like rejected by a woman or a family or his child or his father, or has been rejected, but this is all supposed to be coming in some way from a totally different kind of trauma that would cause somebody to it doesn't work. The performance works. You're right about that. You get that from him. It doesn't work with the other elements of the film. And I can't get over that. I can't get over it.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I think it's one of those times where, like you've said before, not necessarily on this show, but when we've been talking, we just kind of had different experiences with it.
Sure.
Because the thing is even your complaints with the film, like say, like when we disagreed with Mulholland Drive, even though by the end of our recording session for that, you completely 180'd by the end of that conversation. But at the start of that conversation, I felt that what you were saying was as close to wrong as you can be with a subjective medium. In this case, I feel like I almost agree with you, but don't. I'm in Schrodinger's agreement. Where I see completely what you're driving at, and it's just
likewise,
not
by the way,
hitting me in that way. Yeah, no, I get. Sure. I do get what you mean.
You're not wrong, and you're not wrong. And my Mulholland Drive that's such a strange, not even a strange movie like the movie. It's not even that the movie's weird. The experience. What that movie is so bizarre anyway. It's hard to compare to. I know what you mean though, and you're right. All I could say. So this really was just my experience. That lack of what I perceived as a lack of cohesion, that if it had been there would have been so. You know what? I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. I'm frustrated because I liked it. I'm frustrated because I liked everything that was there. Everything from the sound, I say it again, from the soundtrack to the performances to the cast to the emotional resonance. Everything was so good. If they had just, you know what I'm going to say?
Ironed it out. Yeah. No, it completely. It does make sense.
I respect it. That's what I'm trying to say. And
I guess it's a bit like, because people who might listen to this regularly, all two of you, people who watch this regularly will probably realise that a lot of the movies we pick are films that you can probably hear the cogs in our brain turning as we think about a film we're about to talk about in a couple weeks while talking about another. Because I wanted to do this one after Mr. Nobody. Purely because of that thing where we said about Mr. Nobody looking like a hospital ward. But interesting. I like to link back to films we've talked about before, partly because it gives people a little nudge to go and listen to stuff we talked about before, but also because I like to think of this show as me trying to turn you into a film buff. And I feel like I'm getting there, where
I like it.
Where Mr. Nobody, for me, I felt the need to explain everything, and you didn't need it, and contrast to David Lynch, who explains nothing, but there's so much visually there that you can pay attention to and pick apart, and then eventually you'll go, at the very least, I think I get it. And it can be argued, and people will argue, that no one truly gets a David Lynch film, which, whatever. But this film, I guess, is maybe like, it's relying. I could see maybe the argument that it relies on the audience too much. Is it? Would that be what you're driving at?
No, I wish it did, because all I can say is, again, with all due respect, I don't think it's like David Lynch, where there's meaning there that's left to the audience. I think it's left to the audience because it's underwritten.
When I say it relies on the audience too much, it's like David Lynch doesn't rely on the audience. He tells the story, and it's up to you to keep up. Whereas
yes, I think that is one, sure.
And that's why I say, does this one rely on the audience too much?
I don't. So I'll put it this way. I'll put it this way. Those elements that I felt were missing, I don't think that they're being left out was an artistic choice. I think it was a failure to write this thing in a way to do enough drafts to actually make this a coherent story. That's what I'll say.
That makes sense. Because part of this is, and the reason I like these discussions so much is because this show was, I almost think, might have been semi-born out of our discussion on that time that Adam from Your Movie Sucks curb stomped your brother into the concrete, and I agreed with nearly every word of what he said about our beloved guest star. And I remember as we were talking, you said, you went to me, you love the art of filmmaking, and I don't give a flying fuck about it. Yeah. And I feel like as we've been doing this show over the last, I think this is our 11th episode, over these last few months of doing the show, I feel like I'm slowly reprogram you, turning a couple of the nuts and bolts with a spanner and turning you into a film buff.
Well, what I can tell you is I think my comment when I said I don't give a flying fuck about the art of filmmaking, I think that was a little bit wrong. It turns out I do, just not in the way I thought we meant. So Mulholland Drive is the perfect example of that. I like movies to be visual experiences. I'm not like my brother in that I'm not like 2008 Confused Matthew, where he was only cared about the script and the words on the page and all that. I really like alternative means of communicating things to audiences, which film does better than any other medium, I think. Mm-hmm. So it turns out I really do. I just didn't know quite how to articulate that. I also really don't like badly done things like The Lion King and things like that. So there is a
movie night with Andy and Gabe. Lion King coming never.
It's gonna happen. No, it's gonna happen because we have to talk about it, because Dan and I, we don't see eye to eye on a whole lot when it comes to media. His take on The Lion King was both of our takes on it when we saw it in the theater in 1993 or whenever the hell it came out. So, and my opinion and his opinion have not changed, and I will stand by everything that was said in that, because that is the one thing that he did that we both kind of had exactly the same thoughts on.
Should we go into an after hours segment? Should we go into an after hours segment? We can continue this conversation, but I can quickly record a sign off for 1 hour photo and then just edit it, basically.
Yeah, let's do a sign off, and I have to go.
Okay,
I've got to get into yeah.
Well, that was 1 hour photo, and I almost want to say next time we'll be talking about blank, but every single time I have recorded an episode and then it's been Gabe's turn to pick the next episode, every single time he has changed it at the last minute.
Yep.
So I
Every
always
time.
end up, I look like a mug because I'll go, next time we're going to be talking about fucking Sweeney Todd, and then Gabriel will send me a message going, actually, I want to talk about Deep Throat.
Yep.
Every time.
So well, let me be the one to put my reputation on the line doing this now. Next time, we are going to be talking about a movie called Unlawful Entry. And the reason we're going to talk about Unlawful Entry is because if you guys remember our review for The Best of Times, you will remember that that movie starred Robin Williams and Kurt Russell, and we both, Andrew and I, were absolutely floored that there existed a movie, a comedy in the 80s that starred Robin Williams and Kurt Russell, and nobody had ever heard of it. Well, today's movie starred Robin Williams, which you can think of maybe as an alternate universe Jack from The Best of Times. And next week's Unlawful Entry stars Kurt Russell, who you could think maybe of as an alternate universe Reno Hightower. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is The Best of Times cinematic universe.
And with that, we sign off. Goodbye.
Bye.